Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. Join me as we have a real-life discussion on how to change your life by changing your thoughts. Remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth. Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. My name is Sloan Fremont, and I'm your host. This week, I have a really fun and exciting interview. We're going to be talking about tuning into the unconscious mind with the Synchronicity Oracle. My guest is the creator of the Synchronicity Oracle. His name is Eitan Ilfeld, and we're going to talk about synchronicity, how it shows up in our lives, what that means, and how you can use the Oracle really to tune in and understand those unconscious parts of ourselves that really want out and want to be heard. So I really hope you enjoy this interview. We actually do a live reading in this interview, which is so fun. I had a really great time with this. So hope you enjoy it too. This week, I want to welcome Eitan Ilfeld to the Create What You Speak podcast. And we're going to be talking about tuning into the unconscious mind with the Synchronicity Oracle. Eitan is the creator of the Synchronicity Oracle deck, and we're going to have a conversation about what synchronicity means, how to really tap into our unconscious mind, what that actually means. And so if you've ever worked with Oracle decks, if you have an interest in this, or even if you haven't, I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation because Eitan's deck is so different. It's based on synchronicity, and it's I've worked with it in well, we'll get into it because it's really amazing what this deck can do. So a little bit about Eitan before we get into it here. He is the author of Duchamp versus Einstein and Beyond Contemporary Art, also the creator of the Synchronicity Oracle, as I mentioned. He holds a physics degree from Stanford University, is a U.S. chess master, and the owner of Watkins Books, London's oldest mind, body, and spirit bookshop. He also hosts the Eitan Ilfeld podcast. So Eitan, I'm so glad to have you this week. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sloan. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Yes. So I like to do a little icebreaker at the beginning just to have a little fun when we get started. So my question for you this week is, if you had a time machine, would you go back in time or would you go into the future?
Wow. That's a good question. A great question. As a physicist, I'm very interested in time and curiously, it's worth pointing out that according to current technology, it's not that hard to go into the future, actually. So that's something that actually is an option. There are several ways to do that. Potentially, cryogenic freezing is one way to do it, and that technology is improving. I'm sure we'll be able to do that quite easily in the future. And also, if you were to travel in a spacecraft that goes very quickly, or even if it be on Earth, if you start to move closer to the speed of light, then due to special relativity, time moves faster for the people around you, so that when you come back, less time would have moved than it would for other people. So actually, we have the technology to go forward in time, basically. So that's something that isn't as special as going back in time, in a sense. So maybe I'd want to take advantage of going back in time just because that's more unique. I mean, physics talks about the idea of going back in time, but we don't really know if that's possible. Just to kind of get really geeky, I'll mention that there is a particle, a theoretical particle called a tachyon, which is quite interesting because Einstein's law about the speed of light, it's a very hard law, and you can't pass the speed of light, right? But there isn't anything in the equations that actually doesn't say that says you can't always go faster than the speed of light. So if you had a particle that's faster than the speed of light, it could potentially be okay. And a tachyon is that particle that never slows down under the speed of light and supposedly is able to travel through time, because once you're able to go faster than the speed of light, you can do time travel. But time travel is into the past is hard. And so I'm gonna opt for the I think the more unique of the two, and I would try and go into the past.
Go into the past. Yeah. And physics is so interesting to me, just talking about time and the speed of light and travel, and, just wrapping on that, is so, it's crazy to me. It's one of those things that I've never quite, I don't know where I don't know which one I would do. I think there's, I feel like sometimes we fear the future, so wanting to go into the future know that everything's going to be okay, or get the answers to whatever we're looking for, right? But then there's also that other side where it's like, going back and fixing things that you wished you would have done differently. But then both of those things open up a whole door of other, chain reactions of things. So I think, being in our space right at this moment is also very interesting as well, because you have that potential for who knows, right?
Absolutely. And yes, the present is a present, and we get to create our own futures. So,
that's right.
Yeah.
Create our own reality. Exactly. So, okay. So I know I read your bio, but I always like to ask my guests, in your words, who is Eitan Ilfeld?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, I think we're all of us are different people in different scenarios. I have several interests that range from the sciences to competitive chess. That's very analytical and very left brain. But I also really enjoy books and culture and art and creativity. And my mom, who's an astrologer, has always cultivated this sort of curiosity for, I guess, what's beyond the knowable. Let's put it that way. And so I appreciate, I guess, both aspects. And I guess I would just say that I'm a lifelong student, because I'm always trying to learn more. I mean, that's what the journey is about for me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And there's always something, we think we quote know something, and then there's also always another layer, another level, or another something catches. Like I've had this happen where something will catch my attention and be like, wait a minute, I thought I knew this topic, and then I learn a whole nother area that I didn't know existed.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the synchronistic, why can't I say that word, Synchronicity Oracle that you developed. I want to show, here's the booklet of I'm just watching the video. And then also I want to show really quick before we start talking about this, the shape of the cards, which is so unique for anybody who's worked with a Oracle deck before. You've probably not seen this more, this shape here. And so about the deck and tell us a little bit about, maybe we'll start with, what does synchronicity mean? And then also, what is an Oracle deck? If somebody isn't familiar with that, start there.
Sure. Two great questions. An oracle is anything you can use to try and either divine the future or get more in touch with yourself. So it doesn't necessarily have to be just about divination, but basically it's trying to use some sort of mechanism to get in touch with yourself through a sign. And I mean, obviously there's, the Oracle of Delphi is very famous in history for giving guidance. Or, there are people you could go to that would be oracles. And then there are also like various techniques. I mean, the I Ching is one of the oldest, which is also known as the Chinese Book of Changes, where the Chinese would throw coins, and there was a way to interpret these coins into these hexagrams, which would then give you some sort of guidance, something to meditate upon. So, and they also use sticks. I mean, there's so many ways to do it. In terms of the West, I would say that the tarot deck is the most well-known oracle, and of course there are a gazillion different types of tarots with lots of different themes. They all pretty much have 78 cards, so they're similar in essence, but the styles are different, and the Rider Waite is probably the most popular. But actually, it's quite interesting. Anything can be an oracle, right? Like you could take just a random book and just flip through its pages and see where your finger lands and see if that gives you some sort of insight. And that
get a message.
Yeah, exactly. And that brings us back to this idea of synchronicity. So as a word, I guess physicists thought about it a little bit already in the 19th century, but it wasn't really a word that was used in popular culture, or certainly not in the way that we think of it today, until Carl Jung coined the term, and he wrote a really interesting essay about synchronicity, where he was very interested in the idea that there would be these various events that could happen at the same time, or somehow linked, maybe not even the same time, but had some sort of link, even though they weren't caused by the same thing. And he thought, well, that's interesting. Maybe first of all, from a more, I guess, paranormal perspective, you could say, well, that's a sign, and that's the universe speaking to me. Or also, if you wanted to be more of, I guess, like a skeptic, you could still say, well, that's kind of interesting. What does that trigger in me? What is that? What insight can that give me into my subconscious? And Jung was very interested, obviously, in all these various archetypes that we've got. He was also interested in the the collective unconscious, the idea that we have a sort of collective framework that works for everyone, and also the creative unconscious. So I think a lot of us have different parts of us that we're not attuned to, and there are various ways to do that. And I think that oracles are a very interesting technique for trying to get in touch with your creative unconscious, or whatever you want to call it, unconscious, subconscious mind.
Yeah, and it's such a like synchronicity, because you can look at it and think of it all these different ways. You can choose to see it as nothing also, right? You can choose to just see events happening, but there's that, to me it always felt like a click, or like a shimmering something when I have a synchronistic event, like where two things happen and it makes me stop, and there's a moment where I'm like, wait a minute, and it catches me, and I feel, whatever the synchronicity was. And so that, and then we look at the oracle, right? Using tarot cards over the years and getting familiar with that and understanding what it meant, and also what it didn't mean, right? Not taking things and maybe out of like desperation, or out of wanting to see something that isn't there, kind of thing. And so this, having the oracle, having synchronistic events in our lives, there's, what's interesting to me also is that our unconscious mind, there's a disconnect there in some way, that we can't register that or understand that in our everyday thinking. So can you talk a little bit about that, why that happens, or why can't we just look at an event or look at something and say, this is what I'm not able to express in words quite yet, but I can understand it now as I reading the oracle, kind of thing. What can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, so synchronicities, I mean, as you're saying, you decide how you want to take them. I mean, my mom has always celebrated them and loved. We had a culture in the house of sharing synchronicities, and she found them very, very interesting and insightful. So, but yeah, certainly, whether you're a skeptic or you're someone who believes in a higher power, sending a message, it's a very powerful thing. And the thing is that, you asked about how to get in touch with, I guess, our subconscious or unconscious. It's very, we were, I think, again, I studied physics, not psychology, so I have a limited understanding, I guess, of some of these ideas. But from what I understand, in terms of like Jungian psychology, there's this belief that the ego tends to dominate, and that goes back to Freud as well. And it's very hard sometimes to tap into these other parts of us, and there are various ways to kind of bring them to the surface. I mean, Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way, for example, who I have tremendous respect for, she recommends doing morning pages, which is sort of stream of consciousness writing as soon as you wake up. And one of the reasons for that, she says, is because in Jungian psychology, they believe that when you wake up, your ego isn't fully formed until the first 45 minutes. So you're in a bit of a discombobulated like sense of self. And that's when you can actually kind of tap into yourself. So that's a very good moment. Obviously, you can meditate, you can do a lot of other things to try and tap in, but it's not always that easy to access, our deeper selves. And I think it's both fascinating. I think it's also a worthwhile pursuit.
Yes, I agree. And I've done morning pages as well. And I find that's a way, that first, 30, 45 minutes of the morning, that's what I use to set my intention for the day, or it really sets my tone for the day. If I choose to, and it is a lot of times a choice, like I'm being intentional with it, because it's very easy just to get up and be like, it's not worth it, but it is worth it. And what you were saying about the ego having that, blocker, almost like a wall up or something that is the front, even though it's not the truth, often it's that front that doesn't let us get into those deeper areas, or really get to it's a like, have you ever had what you might call surface friends, like your friends on the surface, but you don't tell them the deep, dark secrets of your life, right? That's kind of what I envision as the ego, right? It's that front, or I'm smiling and I'm happy, but I'm not gonna, I'm not revealing my true beliefs to you. And so once we can get past that, and even using like with using your deck and questions I asked when I was working with this, there's that sense of knowing or that relief when you get that message, because it's like I already knew it anyway. I just couldn't formulate it into the words yet.
Yeah.
And I feel it in my body. You know, I can feel a release in my body of like, oh, finally, I get to allow myself to entertain that answer. You know,
it's absolutely. You could even be with a coin flip where, you know, you're feeling really indecisive, and then you flip that coin and you're like, oh, I wish it wasn't that. And that's when you're like, well, you know what? Don't follow the coin, follow your gut.
Yeah, that's your answer. Right. Exactly. So how did you come up with the idea for the Synchronicity Oracle? Because this is so different. And maybe we can explain it to the listeners, how your deck works with the different images and kind of how you came up with all that.
Sure. Yeah. And also happy if you want to be a guinea pig to do a reading as well.
I do want to do a reading. Yes.
Sure. My pleasure. So yeah, I think, you know, there's a lot of great systems out there, but I wanted to create a system that was very accessible. So tarot, obviously it's great, but you know, the major arcana, there are a lot of images there that are easier to interpret, but even that's not necessarily that easy. And certainly you'd have to be, you know, very erudite to know the difference between, let's say, like, you know, the 5 of cups and the 6 of cups, right?
Right.
So I just wanted really kind of simple images that could be interpreted without a guidebook if you want. I still wrote a guidebook for every symbol. And so I curated 57 symbols that drew on various cultures and periods from antiquity to modernity. And I wanted it, to be just basically ready to play with immediately. And the idea of synchronicity was to use, there's a children's game that uses a similar mechanism where you have 2 cards, and any 2 cards you pick from a deck will always have one and only one matching symbol. So that's a very, very nice mechanism. And the idea of the hexagon, which you mentioned, is kind of novel, but basically the idea was you can use hexagons to build with. Or we can say, or scientifically we tell tessellate. To cover a surface is to call it to tessellate. And so hexagons are really quite cool objects, and so these are meant to be played with and built with. In my classic spread, which gives a sort of past, present, future, and then an intuition symbol in the middle, uses the framework of the hexagon. So it's quite a fun thing. So
it is. And can you flip over and show the other side with the symbols? Or just give those watching the video, they can see there's various symbols. They're in different places on the back of the cards. And what I find so interesting with this, when I worked with this, every single time there was a 1-to-1 match. And that is so it's so, I don't know how else to say it. It's like, because I was kind of for a little bit trying to not get a match and see if it would not match, and every single time it matched with one.
Yes, unless we made a mistake. So yeah, we tried hard to make sure that we would.
Every single time it matched, and I find that so interesting, but also it's so straight, like you were saying, right? Some of the other, you know, and with tarot, let's say, in the Rider-Waite deck, and looking at it, like you're saying, maybe you get like the 5 of cups, 6 of cups, and I don't know, 3 of wands or something. And it's, yes, you can interpret, but I never felt confident in that, I guess. And with your deck, I felt like it was very easy. There was no, I didn't feel like I had to study it for 10 years to understand how to interpret, my couple of questions that I had, right? It was very straightforward.
Which, yeah, exactly. And that was the point. And even, the card that I just picked, for example, every card, there are 57 cards with 8 symbols each, and each symbol appears 8 times, like an 8 other cards is like an 8 cards total. And yeah, so this card, for example, has the god Pan, who's a trickster, and also the root of the word panic, by the way, which comes back from, apparently he would wake up in the field and often roar when he was woken up and cause the sheep to stampede. That's where the word panic comes from, apparently. But you've got the Tree of Life from Kabbalah on this card. You've got these chakra lovers, which are a bit hard to see, these lovers that have the chakras. You've got an infinity symbol, a bullseye, a moon, glasses, a mushroom cloud. So all these symbols that are pretty easy to basically play with. And and that was really fun. It was quite hard to choose the precise 57 symbols. That was the real challenge, I have to say.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, because there's so many different ways to think about it. And so, do you want to do a reading real quick?
Yeah. And also I'll say another interesting thing you can do, which is kind of cool, and you don't really have that with other I guess like card systems, let's say, is you can also find a synchronicity between two people. So you can pick a card, I can pick a card, and we can see what symbol comes out, which is like a nice icebreaker. So we can just do that for a second.
Yeah,
if you want.
let's do that.
Tell me when to stop.
Do you want me to use my deck that I have, and I'll pick one, and then you?
Yeah. Oh, wow. I see. Okay, that will be challenging but interesting. Sure, why not?
We'll
okay.
See what
so I'm going to pick one, and you pick one. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, the only problem is that we better not pick the same card. Well, that'd be unlikely.
No, that would be interesting if we did.
That would be a heck of a synchronicity. So that would be cool as well. Okay, cool. I've got a card.
Okay, so do I.
Well, we'll both put ours on the camera, and we'll see if we can find the matching symbol. You know, and I found it. Can you see the matching symbol? It's a little tricky.
No.
Okay, it is the prism. So you've got a rainbow sort of light going there through a prism, and that is a cool symbol. And I think that's a cool synchronicity for us because we both like to spread light. I mean, that's a big part of, I think, you and our existence is about sharing wisdom and spreading light out to people. So I think that's actually quite nice.
Yeah, that is. I really love that. I haven't seen that symbol yet, so that's amazing. I love that.
It's an amazing thing. Again, it goes back to physics. The prism can take white light and turn it into a rainbow. And Newton in 1666, he did a reverse experiment where he used two prisms. He took the rainbow and brought it back into white light. So you can actually even reverse engineer. Right. He even did that. He was very, very clever, Newton, I have to say. It's a beautiful symbol, and it's also about transformation, right? Because the prism is actually changing the light.
Yeah, so, it is. And the book that you have that comes with the deck has just some definitions that people can refer to, and but really, I think is your intent was to let people decide for them what that means. Is that right? That you've got a guide. So I'll show those watching the video. There's a couple of paragraphs, and then there's a meditation at the end, which but then it's really open for interpretation. Absolutely. And you don't need to refer to the guidebook if you use the classic spread that I designed, which you don't have to, but I think it's a nice way to do a reading. Then I do recommend reading everything and taking the reflection meditation for paying attention to that for the intuition symbol that comes out. So I think that's very important. But you could use it for any stage or not use it at all. So yeah, I think that's the idea. There's the meditations I think are quite fun and very easy and quick to do. But by all means, like one doesn't have to use them. It's meant to be playful and up to the user. Yeah, and when I first got the deck and I was going through and asking some questions, and I asked a question about, because at that time I wasn't putting videos out yet for the podcast. And so I was nervous about that because I'd done the show for several years, and I'd always wanted to make it about the show and not about me personally. And so that's why I never did video, because that was back then, that was my decision. But then I was becoming more, I just wanted to put video out. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to be able to do interviews and do this. And so I asked a question around, something, it wasn't a yes, no question. It was something around being successful in that, or, something of that nature. And the symbol that I got was the unicycle juggler. And what I loved about at the end of this, and I still think about this when I kind of have a moment where I'm, if I get I don't know, if I'm having a bad day and I feel like, should I put a video out, and at the end on the description, it talks about in the meditation and imagining yourself walking a tightrope as part of a circus performance, and you're up high, and after taking a few steps, you slip and fall. The audience gasps in fear, but you land gracefully. And the last sentence, you have successfully entertained everyone and knew that you were safe all along. I absolutely love that because that spoke to me about the videos and feeling like, and I don't know what I felt would happen if I put videos out, right? It's not like it's just one of those the ego, and blocking what I really want to do. But I love that about knowing that I was safe all along. That really, in that moment, that was so meaningful to me. So that was a really amazing experience using the deck. Wow, thank you. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think it's great that you're making videos and combining various pieces of content and actually trying to maximize ways to share the wisdom that you're generating. Yes. So I think that's amazing. So I say more power to you. Well, and it goes back to the prism, like we talked about, right? Shining that light, right? And continuing to do that, even in the state of fear, right? Because I was feeling very fearful in my situation, but I didn't let the fear take over, right? I decided to move forward anyway, because my desire to spread that light or spread more positive messages was greater than the fear at that point.
Absolutely. And yeah, fear, I mean, fear is a powerful thing. It's a tough thing, but obviously if we can approach it sometimes from the idea of excitement, right? Because actually excitement and fear can often feel very similar. Then we take a very different point of view. And the juggler, on the unicycle is trying to do so much, but they're also able to do it. And and sometimes we do need to juggle in life and be bold, right? Obviously, if you're trying to juggle too many balls, they will start falling. But the idea of trying to push yourself is, and in the right way, that's a good thing, but it's about balance as well.
Yeah, about that balance. And can you talk a bit about, so with using your deck and asking questions maybe in the right way, because it's very, I know when I first started using Oracle decks, I want a yes, no, like I want to know, is it going to be okay? I want to know, am I going to have the relationship I want? Whatever that is. So it was like yes, no questions. But you talk a little bit about in the guide about asking maybe better phrased questions. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, that's a very interesting thing. I think, obviously you can ask a single question, much like you did, and find one symbol. You just need to draw two cards and one symbol will emerge. And during that process of discovering the symbol, it takes you a while to kind of process that. That might also bring some epiphany. And I think the idea is that through the interaction, by being open to the experience, you're able to gain so much more. If you decide that you're going to be totally, I guess, just have this tunnel vision of just yes and no, then you're closing yourself from the insights that the world can give you. Obviously, yes. I mean, it's nice and there's a relief to some extent to having that yes, no certainty, but I don't think that's what life is all about, actually. And I think that, even if you're a cynic and a skeptic and just wants to look at the world from a purely scientific framework, you still have to acknowledge the fact that the future, according to contemporary physics, quantum mechanics, is uncertain, and that we are creating it. So the idea of something that is completely determined in a way is also, is a bit silly.
Like what you hear so far? Take what you've learned and invest in yourself with the Create What You Speak Academy. Visit createwhatyouspeak.com to learn more. Now back to the show. And very limiting, right? Because it doesn't allow for synchronicities to show up, or it doesn't allow for how you might change. Like maybe in a moment I'm feeling very emotional about something, so I'm bringing a lot of energy or fear when I'm asking about the deck or to the deck, right? Or whatever I'm asking. But then maybe 4 hours later I'm in a completely different state, and I could come and I'm not bringing that fear and that energy. So I've always felt like yes, no, or this is how it's going to be was way too limiting, and not just not how it's. There's better ways to ask questions, and like you were even talking about at the beginning about being a lifelong student and learning, and there's always more to learn, right? And so with the asking questions, maybe asking something like, let's take a job, for example. If somebody's interested in wants a new job, instead of asking, will I get the job, whatever job is, maybe a better question is something like, what can I do to get the job that's right for me? Or what can I do to prepare for this job interview, that kind of stuff. And that is very expansive because there's so many options, so many, opportunities. But will I get the job? Yes or no? Well, you can, that's too rigid, I feel like.
And it's not only is it too rigid, but also, the whole idea of also like, should I do this or not?
Yes.
Right? Should I also it's too rigid also in that type of question abdicates responsibility. And
right.
I think that, we have to own our decisions, right?
Yes.
Like even when we consult an oracle, the idea is it's supposed to help you see inside yourself. That might sound corny, but I do believe that it isn't for someone else or something else to tell you what you need to do. You need to find a way to use these tools to empower yourself. And, just like I think, there are a lot of great gurus out there, but in the end of the day, the greatest guru is inside you. That's who you need to tap into. And you can gain wisdom from spiritual teachers, which is wonderful, but you should never abdicate responsibility for your own decisions. That is when you no longer have agency.
I 100% agree with you.
And that is actually, when you do that, that's when people go into the sort of like victim mentality, right? Like, and of course, we can be victims. We all are at certain points, but you don't, if you bring yourself into that mindset, like that will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if you own, what you do, and then you do it your way, whether or not it may not always go the way you want, but you got to be true to yourself.
I agree with that 100%. And that I actually did a show a while back, it might've been last year, called The Era of the Guru is Over, because I felt for that exact thing where and I've done this, I will fully admit that I've done this, where I've looked to other people for the answers, or I put other people on pedestals, or put other people, I have to do it that way because that person, did it. But which isn't true. And we've all come a long way, I think, over the past couple of years to seeing a lot of these things, like the veil came off. But back to the yes, no question, just one more point on that. When we put those decisions on someone else, an Oracle deck, let's say, or another person or whatever, then doing that, it's like, then people, and because I've done this, so I include myself in this, but it's like we sit back and then we do nothing. Right? We just wait for the yes to show up in our lap. Right? So we don't follow the synchronicity. We don't go inside of ourselves and try to, find out what we really want or what's true for us. Right? We sit back and we wait. And in waiting, we miss opportunities, or all these, I have a framed picture downstairs in my living room that says, "In this moment, there is infinite possibility." And I love to be reminded of that. And when we are putting our faith in someone else, or expecting someone else, or expecting anything outside of ourselves, like you're saying, when we abdicate to someone else, we are not allowing for possibility. And I think that is an amazing reminder to remember that, right? We're in charge, but we get to use tools, and we can use them as we want to, and as any way that helps us gain insight and to see us. But ultimately, we are our own guru, like you said.
Absolutely, because there are a lot of good gurus out there, but they're just human beings as well.
Right.
You can't forget that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like us.
Totally. Is there anything else you want the listeners to know about the Synchronicity Oracle?
I think that's mostly it. I mean, if you want, I can do a quick demo for you. I don't know how quick it is. It'll still take a little bit of time, but it'll be a pleasure to actually.
Yeah, let's do that. Yes.
That will work better, obviously, on video, but we can show how it plays. So
yes, and for anybody that's listening and not, I have the video links in the show notes. So if you get a chance, come back and watch the video, and you'll be able to see the deck in action.
Cool. Awesome. So, okay. So here we go. So I'll let you tell me when to stop, and I'll get a card.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
This one?
Yes.
Okay. Do that. Sorry, I'll let you see the cards while I do it. So as though you're here. There we go. Tell me when to stop.
That one.
Okay. Cool. So I can hold these two cards out. Let's see. Can you see the synchronicity?
The purple
yes,
Om symbol. Or, I'm not
That's
sure.
Right. That's right. That's the Om symbol inside a lotus flower. So this is kind of energetically where you're coming from, supposedly at the moment. What does it mean to you?
The first word that comes to mind is life. Like that, with that lotus around it, like the expanding into multiple. Yeah, if the listeners can see the purple around it there, to me, it's like the layers kind of opening up, and being able to grow.
I mean, I think, the lotus flower, in addition to being, very interesting spiritual symbol in various cultures, it also represents overcoming obstacles.
Yeah.
And transcending. It's a beautiful flower that, comes out of a very muddy and kind of like I guess, not as aesthetic environment.
Right.
So and it does transcend. And Om is very interesting because, we're right now talking on your podcast, and you're a creator and you deal with words, and Om is supposedly the first word, right? That's like the word that has generated the universe, I guess. So I find that, like, that seems to apply. I mean, and we're just doing a generic reading for you in terms of where you're coming from, where you are, where you're going right now. But that all sounds really, really cool. Any other insight you might get from that?
That Om symbol also reminds me, I did yoga for many years, 20 plus years. And so it reminds me of being at different yoga retreats and even chanting or having that more like internal going within, which makes sense, like in where I'm at right now, because that's kind of actually how I've been feeling, is a lot of, and I actually wrote it in my intention for the day, was to kind of like step back and go within a little more when I need to, and not feeling like I have to be doing things that I don't want to be doing.
Absolutely. I think that's key. And I'm just looking at the meditation here. It is encouraging you to try and go and chant, actually.
Yeah. So, interesting.
And that, chanting has shown that research on chanting has shown that it can actually help heal the body, similar to the way that a cat can pair. When cats pair, they actually heal their body as well.
Oh yeah.
So wow. It's
so interesting.
Very, very, very powerful. So let's see, and where you're at. So tell me when to stop, and I'll pick a card.
Stop. That one.
Cool.
And that one.
Cool. It's actually nice for the listeners. I guess you can still hear the cards being shuffled. Yeah. So let's see. We've got 2 cards. We've got to find the synchronicity. Yep. Oh, I see.
The lovers one.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
It is. These are conjugal lovers with the chakras. A little bit hard to see. But yeah, there we go. Come close. You can see the actual chakras.
I see. Yes.
What does that mean to you?
To me, it means calling in a new relationship.
Cool. Is that what you're doing at present?
Yes, I am. And so that symbol of like the right relationship, though, like balance, like the chakras are balanced on there, like a balanced and right relationship. That's what that's saying to me.
Absolutely.
The listeners.
This is a symbol where you can see the balance. You can get chakras symmetrically by one another, and it's very much about balance also with the feminine and the masculine, and that's very interesting. This is also why I think that these readings are very interesting, because you also, both you get to talk about things, and also the person who's doing the reading gets to learn also about you. So that's interesting, and they can say, well, look, this is very interesting because it is a period for you to call in new things, and it's a good time for that, but also to remember to think about balance and also to think about what is it exactly that you want to bring in, right? It's often when you can visualize what you want, you have a better chance of bringing it in, right? Yes. And that is a very key thing. Otherwise, we're kind of lost and we happen to stumble upon something, right? But that's not always the best way to create a future.
Exactly. No, I love that. I love that that reminder of the balance and the not being being intentional. That's what it kind of speaks to me, being intentional about the next person I bring into my life.
And they should probably also be able to appreciate some of these, because you have a lot of amazing, knowledge and skills, and they should be able to appreciate that as well.
Yeah. Yes, they should.
Yes.
Thanks for that 100%.
Reminder. Absolutely. It should not be something for them to think, oh, this is just something wacky with an interesting person. No, they should appreciate you. Obviously, look, we're all different. We can have people compliment us. We don't need to find a mirror image of ourselves, but it is nice to be able to appreciate.
Yeah, to have that, and to have that. I think what you were saying about being intentional is really key, because that is not something I don't want to say it's not something I've done before, but my intentions are different now, and I'm very much more clear on what those are. And I think that's exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah, it is really exciting. And it's also a very creative period as well. It means to create both, in many ways. So that's very cool. Well, let's see where you're headed energetically.
Okay. All right. Stop.
Cool. Okay.
Stop.
Okay. There we go. So we've got quite an interesting range of symbols.
Let's see here.
But what is matching? Have we finally, I always have this little bit of nervousness that we finally found that mistake, It hasn't happened
the
yet.
moon. I see it, the moon, yes.
That's right. So that's cool. You're headed towards the moon. And this is a crescent moon. Well, what does that mean to you?
Really like
cool,
my first thought is like night or darkness. Almost like the crescent moon being like shining light into the darkness.
Yeah.
Starting that little sliver of, but then it will grow to be, to be fully shining. I think that's what that's saying to me.
I like that. The moon also represents silver, I believe. And as you say, it reflects light. It also, it also represents the feminine. And because unlike the sun that creates the light, like it's actually reflecting back the light from the sun. So it's also about being in touch with your feminine self as well. And I think it's very interesting. This is where I might actually go and open the book and see if I can find some interesting insight. So what I do is I go to the table of contents, and it's got, for every image, it's got a page. So it's very easy. And I just I'll go to the moon. So quick to find. And indeed, the keywords are reflection, silver, nighttime, passivity, and feminine. And also for every image, I should say, I actually, there are a lot of interesting keywords, but I'll always make sure that there's a shadow word as well, because I think every image has positive things, but also a shadow. And it's important to also, acknowledge that. So I think that's really interesting. And now just to make it a bit quicker, I'll read some stuff. In Hinduism, Lord Shiva is often shown wearing a crescent moon on his head, symbolizing that he is the master of time. In alchemy, it represents silver. It was also the emblem for the Roman goddess Diana, the Greek equivalent of Artemis, and known as Inanna or Ishtar in ancient Mesopotamia, signifying virginity. Esoteric traditions have attributed a feminine energy to the moon that counters the masculine energy of the sun. Okay, well, we'll skip ahead. And here the reflection is the moon rises and sets much quicker than the sun, completing its lunar cycle in less than a month. Do you identify more with the sun or the moon? Does that identification fluctuate throughout the day? Do you usually mirror the energy and emotions of people around you? That's a question. Or are you
that is a good question. Yes.
Because I think that's very interesting as well when we interact with people. What does that bring out of us? Obviously, to some extent, we all mirror a little bit, but who is it that brings more of us out? Or who is it? When do we want to speak more? When do we become more kind of, I guess, introverted? And there's a nice meditation here that involves a river, but we'll leave that. We'll read the meditation for the final intuition symbol. That's going to be exciting. We'll see how that works. So you now have gotten a reading for the past, present, and future as they are energetically at the moment, and then we take all of those 6 cards. I'll just show in the video if it can kind of work. Yeah, there we go. And we form a circle, and there's room for one last card, and that card will help us find hopefully an intuitive symbol to guide you in the near future.
I love weeks. That. Yeah.
So I'm going to let you pick the one final card, and then we'll see if we can actually on Zoom. It's not that easy, but hopefully we can analyze the constellation of cards.
Okay. Stop.
Okay. Is it this one?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. This, or it could be anything. It could be the bottom, the top, whatever you want.
Now the one before that, actually, on the bottom.
Okay. Good. See, that's great that you went for what you wanted. I've taken that for you for your choice, and I'm putting it in the middle, and that's great. And now let's see. I'm going to have to do this. Would be interesting to see how we can do this.
And so, for those listening, what Eitan has done is he's put the hexagon cards in a circle, and they connect to each other based on their shape. And then the last card goes in the middle of all of that. That's
right. So now we're going to look at the middle card. We'll find the link with its neighbors. So, for example, between this card and this card, the link is these kissing lovers. You can kind of see that, I think.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
Which goes back to your chakra lovers before.
Right.
And then between here and here, the link is the number pi. And I don't know, can you see the link between these two here?
The star.
That's right, the pentagram. And here?
The alien.
Very good. Yep, that's right. And then here?
That one we have the
clown.
Okay. I can't see the upper of the card, so okay.
Gotcha. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
Okay. And then here?
The glasses.
The glasses. So this is actually very interesting. It's very, very rare. Usually we will have a symbol appear more than once, and that will become a dominant symbol. Sometimes you'll have more than one symbol appear more than once. You could have two dominant symbols. You have the perfect balance. You've actually got in 6 different symbols. And that's quite cool and interesting. I write in the book that it's up to you then to kind of interpret that. Either it means that you need to find your own intuition, or you can go for a symbol that you find interesting in there. But I think all those symbols are very interesting to think about. So the glasses are about trying to see more clearly.
Right.
The clown is about identity. And sometimes we mask ourselves as well. And performing, we often entertain, but what about, how do we show our, do we want to hide our inner selves or not? The alien is about being an outsider sometimes, right? That's an interesting thing. So I think all those symbols, what I would do is I like to take all of those 6 and see if there's some insight there. And then the pentagram, that's obviously, it can go back to like the 4 or the 5 elements. There's different, and the order of the universe as well. And the lovers goes back to what you're thinking about. I mean, I think that's also, again, about harmony, right? Because it's about balance. And pi is about balance. It's about circles. It's about, opening and closing circles as well. That's what the number pi is all about. That's what it was created for. So I don't know, is there a specific symbol from all those that, I don't know, you're most drawn to right now? Because this is, again, a unique situation. We can read a meditation for one of them.
Well, immediately I go to the lovers one because, like I said, but then also the glasses, like being able to see clearly, and the clown and the alien of, the identity or being, feeling the outsider. All of these almost tell a story in a way, right? It's to me.
Well, totally. Well, let's go back for a second and remember what was the story that we got so far. So you started with the Om Lotus. You're coming from the word and overcoming obstacles and this transformation, and then you got to the chakra lovers, which is about finding balance and I would say it's also for creative phase as well. It's creativity too, but also balancing the masculine and the feminine and trying to visualize and create that harmony in the future. And then, do you remember what you got going forward? What was the sign?
What was it? The
moon.
Oh yeah, the moon. Yes.
Yeah. So your narrative, it starts from, the word that creates anything, almost kind of like Genesis, right? Almost the beginning to then procreation, or also finding also a partner to, and that could be like, literally, figuratively, all these different ways, creating, and then to reflecting light. That's moving towards reflecting light. And now, in terms of the symbols, I mean, I like that you're drawn to, it's 4 symbols in particular. Certainly the clown and the alien are very similar in certain ways because they're both about identity, and then obviously glasses about seeing more clearly, and the lovers about balance. Let's pick one of them for a meditation. Do you want to choose one from those 4?
Let's do the glasses to see
clearly. I like that. By the way, random synchronicity. I don't wear glasses, but I've decided to go and get my eyes tested because I do that once in a blue moon. And so I literally today, right before I called to make an appointment at an optometrist to get my eyes tested. So I will be doing that next week.
Oh, wow.
But interesting synchronicity. But yeah, glasses. So vision, transparency, perspective, but the shadow is blindness, right? And the reflection, by the way, to kind of go down to its final sentence, it says, when you view something, you're always interacting with it in some way, and that interaction has the ability to change both you and the viewed object. So that's interesting. And this is something, by the way, going back to physics, it's true. The observer always changes the experiment. You cannot observe something, completely without influence it. It's impossible. So that's actually a very important thing, because in old science, people thought that was possible, but it isn't possible. And the meditation is: imagine seeing a fog of light in front of you, which makes everything ahead unclear. You take a deep breath and put on corrective glasses. All of a sudden, the fog disappears, and you are now able to see a rainbow of magnificent colors. Know that the rainbow was always there all along. You just needed the right tools to see it. And I think, by the way, that's what synchronicity is all about. So that's cool. I don't know. Do you find, is that interesting? Do you find that useful?
It totally is, because it also goes back to the juggler about how I was always safe when I asked that question. And then the glasses seeing clearly. One way I always described when something clicks with me, or I read some concept like I'm feeling right now with what we're talking about, it always reminded me of being at the eye doctor, and when they click the things down and you can see clearly, and that's what that reminds me of, is that clarity of drawing out those feelings and emotions that are swirling around inside but don't have words formed to them yet, and being able to process that, but also it was always there, you just needed to see it. Like that gives me chills. Like that's I think that's so cool. I love it.
Awesome. It's a fun reading. I enjoyed doing it. And I'll show just again the whole layout, but it's quite a cool thing.
It is. The spread, the way the cards interact with each other and connect is so it's so amazing. Eitan, I've been really enjoyed having you on the show. Congratulations on the deck. It's so amazing. Can you tell the listeners where they can find out more about you and purchase their own deck?
Sure. So it's available in a lot of places. A lot of bookshops have it, and it can also be purchased online. So there's a myriad of places to buy it from. And if anyone's interested in listening to my podcast, just Google Eitan Ilfeld podcast. It's on Spotify and also on Apple podcasts. And and I have to say it's been such a pleasure chatting with you. And I have no doubt that you will find what you seek, because you're doing it all the time. I mean, that's what you are. And you're like me. You're a student, and I hope that you can keep creating lots of light for as many people as possible, because I think what you're doing is wonderful. So
thank you, and you as well. Again, congratulations on the deck, and it's amazing. I'm smiling. Like, for those who aren't watching the video, I have the biggest smile on my face, because I feel like it was so fun, but so interesting. And also, again, like we talked about at the beginning, one of those, a tool that you can use for life, you can use to guide your life. And it's amazing. So Eitan, again, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thank you, Sloan. It was a real pleasure.
Yes. And also I'll link to your to where people can find you in the show notes.
Sure. Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you. What an absolutely fun and amazing interview that was with Eitan. I loved the live reading. That was so fun. It being able to tune in like that's a real life example of that, right? Being able to use symbols to go within, to when you're presented with that. And like I was on the spot, right? We didn't plan these out with the cards or anything ahead of time, but when I was going through that, when he was showing the cards and asking me what it meant to me, I was going with the first thing that came to mind, that gut feeling, that whatever my intuition or my subconscious was trying to tell me. And I went with that. And it's so interesting that it paints a story that when you start to bring those things to life, you can put some pieces together, pieces of the puzzle, right? Being able to do that. And that's so fun to me. It's, I just absolutely love that. I love doing that reading live. And, we got into a lot of different things today, talking about synchronicity. If you choose to believe in it or not, right? Because you have the option not to, that's totally fine too. But when we started talking about never advocating your own responsibility, right? That's such a great reminder to all of us, that it's not the oracle telling us how our life's going to go. It's not a guru telling us how our lives are going to go, right? It's up to us. We get to decide that. We pick. End of story, really. End of story. We pick. And so there are tools that we can use along the way to tune in and break through barriers or get through those blocks. And that's why I wanted to bring Eitan onto the show this week, to be able to just give another example of that. But ultimately, it all is in our control, right? It rests in our hands, and we get to be the one that decides. So I hope you enjoyed this interview with Eitan. I certainly did. It was so much fun. And thank you again for listening this week on the Create What You Speak podcast. You can find out more about me at my website, sloanfremont.com. And if you want to get notified every time there's a new podcast episode, just click on the right-hand side on the website and you'll find that. Also, remember, I have my Create What You Speak Academy. This is where you can take what I talk about in the podcast one step further in your life. And my newest course is called the BS Method, the Better Stories Method, how to tell a better story in 5 minutes or less. And yes, you can do that. I give you all the tools to do that. I give you different ways to think about things, different scripts, different things that you can use to start telling yourself a different story, because we all know when we change our story, we change our life. So that's it for this week. Be sure to tune in next week, where I will continue to bring you real life examples on how to continue to live free in what feels like an unfree world.